In the year 1347, strange ships arrived at the ports of Europe. Their sails were torn by storms, their crews barely alive, and a horrifying sickness traveled silently inside them. Within just a few years, this disease would kill tens of millions of people and reshape the future of human civilization forever. This was the Black Death. To the people of medieval Europe, it felt like the end of the world. Entire villages vanished. Families disappeared overnight. Streets once filled with merchants and travelers became silent graveyards. The plague spread so fast that many victims died only days after showing symptoms. But the terrifying truth is that nobody understood what was happening. Doctors believed the disease came from poisoned air. Some blamed planets aligning in the sky. Others thought it was divine punishment from God. In panic, desperate people carried flowers to block the smell of death, burned herbs in their homes, and wore primitive masks filled with perfume. None of it worked. The Black Death likely began far from Europe, somewhere in Central Asia. Historians believe the disease traveled along major trade routes used by merchants crossing continents. Hidden inside cargo ships and caravans were infected fleas living on black rats. As trade expanded, so did the plague. One of the most important moments happened in the port city of Kaffa near the Black Sea. During a brutal siege, infected bodies may have been thrown over the city walls, spreading disease among defenders. Merchants fleeing the chaos escaped by ship, unknowingly carrying the plague toward Europe. When the ships arrived in Sicily in 1347, witnesses described horrifying scenes. Sailors were covered in black boils, bleeding from the mouth, and dying where they stood. Authorities ordered the ships away, but it was already too late. The disease spread rapidly through Italy, France, Spain, England, and beyond. People developed painful swollen lumps called buboes under their arms and near their necks. Fevers became unbearable. Skin darkened from internal bleeding. Some victims died within 24 hours. Fear consumed entire cities. In many places, priests could not bury the dead fast enough. Giant mass graves were dug outside city walls. Wagons filled with bodies rolled through streets day and night. The sound of church bells became constant. Some people locked themselves inside their homes, refusing contact with the outside world. Others fled into the countryside, hoping to escape infection. But the plague followed almost everywhere. The wealthy often escaped to isolated estates while the poor remained trapped inside crowded cities. This created even more anger and chaos. Crime increased. Trade collapsed. Entire economies stopped functioning. In Florence, one of Europe's richest cities, thousands died within months. The bacteria responsible for the Black Death, known today as Yersinia pestis, would not be discovered for centuries. By the early 1350s, the plague had killed an estimated 30 to 50% of Europe's population. Imagine entire towns where every second person disappeared. Fields were abandoned because there were not enough workers to farm crops. Food shortages became severe. Labor became incredibly valuable because so many workers had died. And strangely enough, this tragedy began changing society in unexpected ways. Before the plague, many peasants lived under strict feudal systems controlled by powerful landowners. But after millions died, surviving workers suddenly had more bargaining power. Landowners became desperate for labor. Wages rose. Some peasants demanded better conditions or moved to different towns for higher pay. In some regions, the social order that had existed for centuries began to weaken. Historians believe the Black Death helped accelerate the decline of feudalism and slowly pushed Europe toward major economic and social transformation. Even art changed. Paintings became darker and more focused on death. Skeletons, grim reapers, and themes of mortality appeared everywhere. Writers and philosophers became obsessed with how fragile human life truly was. The psychological scars lasted for generations. But the plague itself never completely disappeared. Outbreaks continued appearing across Europe for centuries. Some cities attempted early forms of quarantine by forcing arriving ships to wait offshore for 40 days before docking. This practice eventually gave us the word quarantine itself. Over time, humanity slowly learned important lessons about disease, trade, sanitation, and public health. But the Black Death remains one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. It changed borders, economies, religion, medicine, politics, and culture. And perhaps the most terrifying part is this: the people living through it had no idea why it was happening. Imagine watching your city collapse while doctors fail, leaders panic, and death spreads faster every day. For millions of people in medieval Europe, that nightmare was reality. The Black Death was not just a disease. It was a moment that changed the course of human history forever.